Just imagine some really cool intro music right here is where you would imagine some really cool intro music. We're going to do that one more time. Guys, like I just swallowed my tongue, and that's really bad for a podcast. Will Huawei really deliver 13 different color options for the P10? What do we know and what don't we know about the LG G6? Can Fossil re-energize the wearable market? And let's talk about Verizon's unlimited data plan. These stories and we'll answer your viewer questions, so make sure you're charged and ready for episode 240 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Well, this weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile, smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid, and unlimited data meant that there was a Star Trek The Next Generation marathon on the TV. All right. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, blasting the signal from Southern California that's about to get hit with more rain, and I couldn't be happier. Joined, as always, by plucky podcast producer, Mr. Jules Wong. How's it going out there, buddy boy?
So it's already been about 3 minutes since we restarted this Hangouts call, and already the deterioration is just lovely downhill.
Yeah, we might have robot Jules for the podcast this week. We're going to try and keep him on the line as best we can, sorting out another batch of Hangouts problems as we investigate what we'll use to replace Hangouts for the Pocketnow Weekly to provide you all.
I think we're just gonna do it next week. We're just gonna like
try something. Yeah, definitely.
We're gonna cut it. We're just gonna like boom right there. And everything will just be a shit show from now on.
Well, and also just the experimenting. Like, how do you experiment to replace the backbone streaming service that you've been using?
Experimentation? Where is that? There is no experimentation.
No,
this is do or die. There is no try. Like all those cliches.
Now, one of the things that'll help us make that transition is, of course, this week's sponsor. No, this week we're once again proud to announce we are joined by Mara.ai. Just a brief rundown. Technology has changed the way we run. Thanks to smartphones, now even casual runners can map their routes, create pump-up playlists, and track their progress. However, taking advantage of all of these technologies has always meant stopping to look at your phone, which means losing motion and momentum. That's about to change because now there's Mara, a hands-free running assistant that uses voice recognition and the microphone in your earbuds to help you optimize your runs. You can tell her what kind of run you'd like to do, ask questions about your speed, pace, or location, or have her play albums and playlists from your music library. Mara can also tell you how you are doing in comparison to your past runs, or warn you about changes in weather, like if it's about to rain, like it will tomorrow in Southern California. She'll even track your progress by noting all of your hotspots and rough legs each time you run. You can connect Mara to Amazon Alexa-enabled devices and ask her about lifetime statistics and records you've set while you get ready for your next run. Visit Mara.ai to download your free virtual running assistant today, and we thank them for helping us fund this burning train wreck of a podcast as we figure out how to move beyond Google Hangouts.
I think we should just surrender all funds to Google so that they can not, have this.
Google, they're a small little operation. They probably need the cash to keep these types, like the 3 servers that are being powered by hamster wheels probably need just a little extra, like the little water bottle thingies with the little clicky ball in them so that the hamsters can stay hydrated.
A little more grease. Why not? Please.
Right? The poor little hamsters in rusted wheels.
They've worked themselves to a crisp.
Yeah, there's like a compact Pentium 2 kicked into someone's like leaky basement, and that's now the Hangout server for all of Google. So yeah, we'll try and sort that out. But I did actually get a chance to check out Mara.ai. Unfortunately, I've been sick over the last week, so I haven't been getting out to exercise as often as I'd like. But it is a cool little service. What I think is interesting is I think we're going to be in for an era of a lot of these products where it'll help you combine a couple different apps that probably already live on your phone if you're into this sort of style of working out. So it doesn't really create one new system, but it helps you sort of cluster together. You know, like you're not playing a playlist from a music app and then a fitness tracking service and then a heart rate service. And then I used to use what was the zombies like ARG game. I can't remember what the name of that app was. Oh, that's going to bug me. But there was this great like running app where it would broadcast a story. It was like a radio drama about a zombie apocalypse. And then certain times during your run, it would like cue you like, oh no, the zombies are about to get you. And that would mean you'd have to run faster and would track your progress. But you couldn't like if you used something like that, then you couldn't listen to music on your phone, and then it didn't work with other plugins, and you had all these separate pieces that you would have to keep organized. So Mara
I just
actually
have a
does
podcast like the Pocketnow Weekly to help me run.
right? And then it just at certain times during the podcast will be like, oh no, the zombies are about to get you. And that'll be your cue to run faster or pedal harder if you're doing like a stationary bike. I think.
Oh no, we're about to complain about Hangouts again. Run faster in order to
Well,
get
no,
through
that's
this.
I don't even want to say that's the Pocketnow drinking game because I think we'll kill our audience every time we complain about
The
Hangouts.
Pocketnow drinking, running, ranking. That's gonna be fad of 2017.
So all of our complaining and crankiness about Hangouts. One thing I think we can jump right into news. One thing that I don't think anyone's got any serious complaints about is the return of unlimited data at Verizon. I am surprised that that this plan was dropped and kind of announced as unceremoniously as it was. A Verizon that even just weeks ago had been posturing that consumers didn't really need unlimited. I mean, who really needs that? And if people really wanted it, then they would offer it. And they even had a series of commercials. I think those commercials are still airing. Like, why would you pay for data you don't use? You only need 5 gigabytes at Verizon for $50. And then all of a sudden this drops, and it kind of has left a number of other competitors, even T-Mobile, sort of scrambling to figure out how they're going to compete directly against it.
Yeah, so this was not really expected, especially when it just promoted a 5 gigabyte plan, and it was like it's more data than 4 out of 5 people would need. Like, all right, so it's been kind of reiterating that marketing for a while, and I guess the first signs that we were going to see some form of a competitiveness from Verizon was the fact that it had a new, I think it was a CTO, or something. Well, apologies. I should be a little more knowledgeable about this, but I am not. But he's new. He comes from the UK. I don't know his name, but he was pretty firing back at T-Mobile for a while now, and this might be just one of the wars between the red hues that it wants to start, and it does a great job of doing so. So let's talk about the plan itself. It's the Verizon Unlimited plan. It's unlimited data, talk, and text. In terms of streaming, you get HD streams for video, which we believe to be about 720p. There's 10 gigabytes of LTE speeds for hotspot data, 3G speeds afterwards. There's also roaming data for Canada and Mexico, full speed, free calls and texts to those countries as well. And you also have a $5 a month connected device add-on and travel passes to extend those roaming data privileges beyond Canada and Mexico for $10 a day. And yeah, that's also a limited 2G as well. So there's that, all of that, packed into an $80 plan. And I believe the math was $180 for 4 lines. So yeah, not bad. It's pretty, I mean, that was before then. It was the first time that we've talked about, high speed hotspot data, and that much, 10 gigabytes of it, at that price level. if you were to compare it to other plans from T-Mobile and Sprint, it would be basically like the plus or premium tier of their
Yeah.
unlimited data plans. So it was pretty nice. Now, what T-Mobile did to one up them, as they would like to say, is talk about upgrading its base plan, and that's a $70 plan. So they have the One Plus at $85, and this is their basic $70 plan. It basically gives 10 gigabytes of LTE hotspot, unlimited 3G for after that, HD quality video streams. Boom, right there. So
Right.
that's the gist of that, and it's still at $70, and they're gonna talk about the inclusion of taxes and fees into that advertised rate. So $70 is $70, and all lines subsequently are going to be $30 each. So there you go. And then Sprint decided, hey, it's late in the week, and everything, all their
Oh, Sprint.
everyone is like, yeah, everyone is launching their plans on either Friday or T-Mobile is launching its plan on Friday, I think. Verizon's made theirs public on Monday, and yeah, so it was like it did the diet version of
Right.
upgrading. I mean, well, actually, I don't want to characterize this in the wrong way. So they are promoing their plan, their revised plan for unlimited data, talk, and text, which originally was called Unlimited Freedom, and I don't know why they decided to get rid of that name. So
Yeah.
that's very much a mouthful to say. But again, HD quality streams, 10 gigabytes of mobile hotspot LTE, and first line. But here's the thing. Now the pricing on theirs is $60 a month for the base plan. They're
Right.
promoting a $50 price for 18 months, and then there's $40 for the second line, and then it's $90 for like up to 4 lines or 5 lines. I think
Yeah.
they're still they had that $90 for 5 lines plan or promo up for a little bit, so they're just combining things here.
So I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
we heard from Sprint. We're pretty
AT&T
confident
also
that
has one today.
I was just gonna say, and so now like in AT&T is sort of joining and wading into the fray. Also, again, it kind of felt like AT&T and T-Mobile were really wanting to catch the news cycle right before the weekend. To put out the commentary on theirs. We do have a couple comments here. We probably should have mentioned earlier before we jumped into Verizon. If you'd like to contact us during the show, you can hit us up on Twitter during the live broadcast using the hashtag pnweekly. And then if you're more one of those emailing type people, if you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, hit us up on podcast@pocketnow.com. We've got two comments here from @TechFiles, Mr. Ed Maudlin. Verizon has now returned to reality, but now with a 22 gigabyte throttling limit. Too late for me and my $1,300 bill. And then,
Well,
and his
to be fair, T-Mobile has theirs at 28, which is the 23, like the top 3%. But
yeah,
most of them are 22 or 25 or something like that. So.
But again, I mean, like even that as a restriction, I thought was pretty reasonable from Verizon. And then he also writes T-Mobile's response: rolling back every dumb condition of T-Mobile One.
Man, so again, Ed Mondlin, we have to say, is a Metro PCS associate.
In full disclosure, no, I think this is really fascinating because usually it was Verizon's job to try and dictate where the industry was going, why plans could be as expensive as they were. They had the initial that first foray into 4G LTE. They fired up their network first. They set the standard. So it is really interesting watching Verizon.
Were they the first to go away from the unlimited data?
Oh yeah, and they were most aggressive in trying to get grandfathered unlimited people on grandfathered unlimited plans off of their plans. But again, that's what's so fascinating about watching the number one company looking at market pressures and looking at their competition and actually doing something which is proven to be somewhat disruptive. You know, when T-Mobile was doing their big stint with different types of unlimited plans and binge on and different things, we sort of expected that from the third place carrier. To watch Verizon backtrack on something they were super vocal about and then very quickly shift the market pressure against their competition like this, I think is a fascinating play. I don't know that I'm going to rush out to do business for Verizon anytime soon, but that at least provides me leverage and competition in my area where I get pretty good coverage on T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon for whenever I'm looking to do up my next cell phone plan.
Well, I mean, Verizon is, I mean, I'll give them credit for shifting against the tide and, realizing that things have changed. It took them this long to do so. I mean, we're talking about 4 years since the first move from T-Mobile to do away with contracts, and they followed along like maybe 2.5 years later about with the demise of 2-year contracts.
Right.
So, it's been a slow, kind of kicking and dragging process as CEO of T-Mobile, John Ledger, likes to point out and likes to brag about. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, we're the first, and we're not going to stop until we're going to drag everyone to their knees, basically." And Verizon,
Sure.
in terms of that, I mean, including the hotspot, I think that was a pretty high point for them. Just being able to spread around the wealth, especially in where we're relying more and more on distributing data between tablets and laptops even, and sometimes, and the weather's getting more volatile in certain areas, so that more people are losing power. Like, last line of defense comes down to the phones.
Yeah.
And I think this is a pretty good, sensible thing to include, which I am ashamed to say for AT&T. The Verge is reporting that its first line for its unlimited plan will be $100 a month. Streaming will be limited to 720p, and you have to toggle, the HD video on every time. Or, well, I think not every time, just once, maybe. I'm not sure. I'll have to check in on that. And there was no hotspot data.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that, I mean,
And
like things like that,
$100 a
I think
month.
will make a big those are big leverage issues right now. And I think you've hit on something right there in that we're rapidly approaching a services market where all of these companies are trying to buy up services platforms.
I
All
mean,
of them are
AT&T
looking at
is stuck
multimedia
with,
content.
yeah, Time Warner, $85.5 billion. Like,
Yeah.
where things are tied up. They tied up their initial like revival of the unlimited plan with DirecTV service because
Now,
they
Jules,
ate that up.
one of the first things I thought of when Verizon did this is, do you think we're going to be in for the same split pricing models? So like when we went from 3G to 4G, we had these 3G unlimited plans, 4G comes out, and suddenly people are wanting to try and tier, like or cap, put thresholds on data, because we know this year is going to be the year where I think AT&T and Verizon are going to start flirting with their 5G rollout. Do you think that this is now that same transition all over again, that when 5G networks start popping up and we start seeing real progress in getting consumers on 5G devices, that they're going to go back to, oh, you can get a 3 gigabyte plan on our 5G network only for like $200 a month? Do you think that we're going to
I'm
see that same thing happen again?
I'm really not sure that they'll be stupid enough to see that, oh, I mean, streaming is, we've reached the point where we're going to see exponential growth,
Right.
and, 5G has to serve that. So in terms of, stifling that, I understand, that they could be trying to hold that off while they're building out their infrastructure. But I don't see that happening. I mean, I think it's just going to be, tower sharing, 5G, 4G. It's going to, come across this way and that way every so often. And we're going to see, I mean, AT&T, if it's setting itself up for 5G, the $100 a month bit is might be able to go towards that, might be able to say,
Right.
hey, we got 5G, you're paying more for it, but you're getting it. So I
Because
think it might
I
be just
totally
that.
think that whoever wins that race getting to 5G first, I think at least has the bragging rights to charge some kind of premium in the early outlay. of that setup.
Verizon is trying to get their 5G stuff going on, but they're not really at it until, I mean, they have some 600 megahertz
Yeah.
materials there, but it's not going to be really
And
activated
also,
until
I just it
a
sounds
few
kind of
years from
silly
now.
that these might be related, but it seems to me, and someone please who's more knowledgeable than I am in terms of this kind of wireless versus wireline business, someone please
Quan
correct
at
me in the comments.
pocketnow.com.
No, sure, or in the comments of this video, or on
No,
Twitter,
get
anywhere.
on our
No,
guest list, please.
but what I was saying is it seems to me like AT&T has invested radically more in backhaul, for their few flirtations in fighting Google Fiber, for the acquisitions that they've been eating up, other type, especially in these types of neighborhoods around Los Angeles too. While so much of it's still on DSL, they are offering these little pockets of fiber data, things like that. At the time where Verizon has completely sort of walked away from their own FiOS, that it would seem to me that AT&T might actually have the infrastructure to launch a 5G network a bit more efficiently than Verizon might at this point.
I mean, they've been bragging about, 2017 is going to be their year. So
Yeah.
there's that. They've been, talking about most recent development has been drones. They've been talking about Project AirGig, which is their effort to spread wireless bandwidth through little plastic antennas on top of the power grid. So they have plenty of options that they're dabbling into. Their first test markets, I believe, are Austin and Indianapolis. I believe
Yeah.
they're coming online just a few weeks ago. So there's definitely AT&T definitely is showing off its muscle, and they'll, I think, undoubtedly be the first ones out. But in terms of just playing the game of branding and imaging that, um, it's a danger.
Yeah.
They may, I mean, it's
Well,
streaming.
I think the nice thing is what with the world market being a bit more of a pressure, and especially smartphone manufacturers not wanting to build phones for like 12 different standards, is that at least we can be somewhat confident. Because Ed Modlin brought this up in a tweet, and I can't find it because I'm scrolling back through. But we can at least be somewhat confident that we're not looking at another WiMAX situation. There will probably be proprietary bands. So if you buy an AT&T 5G phone at the very beginning of 5G, it probably won't work on a Verizon 5G network, directly or anything like that.
Curious
But
thing about WiMAX. So there's Apple has we saw a copy of the Apple versus Qualcomm complaint, and one of them was talking about how Qualcomm would agree with Apple to go into these delayed licensing deals where they would trickle in royalties to Apple. And one of them was concerning WiMAX. And just when it was not a Qualcomm technology that was being invested into, and Apple was
right.
considering working on that,
Huh.
and basically we would have seen a WiMAX iPhone if it weren't for the fact that Qualcomm just said, you know what, we're not going to do this, so you better agree with us to
Wow.
do this.
I mean,
And
just
that
imagine
was
how
back in
different the
2007.
world would have been if the iPhone had gone WiMAX. Just
Yeah.
like how terrible the world would have been if Apple had decided to go WiMAX. That's
Well,
awesome.
LTE was definitely, it was definitely a hog to invest into.
Yeah.
So like that was asking for it. That was a big ask back in 2007. But and
I,
WiMAX was sort of like the gap.
Yeah,
So
I'll
who
be curious
knows?
to see if there's any other sort of because Google was flirting with some sort of wide area Wi-Fi for a while on their campus, and I'll be curious to see if anything ever comes from that. But we have a couple other comments here that I want to get to from the PN Weekly hashtag in reply to our issues with Google Hangouts and how we would kill our audience if we did a PN Weekly drinking game. At Panzer Z replies, who needs a drinking game? Cheer. So he's apparently on a roll all by himself, and we thank him for drunken tweeting during our during our podcast. From at Tech Files, from Ed Modlin. Let's hope that carriers do not end up supporting 7 different standards. And I think, like I said, I hope the world market is going to put a crimp on that so that manufacturers don't have to. And then we have a
I'm especially liking Espina Harlow's comment here. It's a picture of they're just doing the split screen mode and having the pnweekly hashtag
right.
tracking on Twitter, and then our face or his face.
I feel vain enough to here we'll because it's a great screen grab of me and my buck teeth. So,
ta-da! Ching!
At some point, we'll get some Invisalign going on there. See, look at that. Look at that.
Boom.
I gotta say, like over the last couple weeks, I've been using split screen on my phones a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And just for like silly things too. Like I want a map and this other piece of text up at the same time. And I gotta say, I'm really digging it.
I'm with Harlow here because the video is always the thing that's like it's a somewhat of a passive experience, and then you're trying to get things done on the other pane. So it's just it's great. So
well, and I was doing that a lot for flights. So starting which phone was it? Was it the Note 5 that I started doing this a lot, where I have my little Bluetooth folding keyboard, and I would have a text documented up on one half and a video playing in the other over my Bluetooth headphones, just so I could write and have like some background noise going at the same time. And I really liked being able to do that. So I've been doing that pretty often. But even just not driving around, like, hey, I want to have this up and I want to reply to a text message, and it's actually proven to be a pretty handy little feature. We've got a ton of people asking questions about the G6. We do have that in the news lineup. This is where Jules would play a really cool little music set.
Okay.
But we're actually going to start, and I'm going to go back into my screen share. I shouldn't have left. We're going to go back into my screen share here, because the first story that we wanted to bring up for news, this can't be true, can it, Jules? Please tell me this isn't real, that Huawei is looking at putting out, what is it, 14 different colors? 13 different colors, something like that?
So basically, this was an extension of looking into a presentation slide. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find this we talked about for maybe a couple weeks now, about the pricing and the memory configuration for the P10 and P10 Plus, at least in China. And you see all the filler text below, like the memories and the prices. Those are colors. And you see 3 of them for the base model. Mid-tier has 6. There are 9 for the Huawei P10 6GB, 128GB model, and then there are 5 for the P10 Plus. And odd thing is that there are 9 colors over there, but they're not using the same 9, like the same colors for some
phones.
All the phones. So it's like I think it was just the 4 and 32 model that had the unique shades of gold and silver. So all right, here we go. Amber gold, rose gold, streaming gold, ink black, diamond silver, glacial silver, moonlight silver, smoky gray, topaz blue, quartz red, Roland violet. I don't know what Roland has to do with anything here. Maybe it's just a bad translation. Who knows? And China white.
Now, I think we can do that faster. Okay, ready? Amber gold, rose gold, streaming gold, ink black, diamond silver, glacial silver, moonlight silver, smoky gray, topaz blue, quartz red, Roland violet, and China white. Boom!
Gotta catch them all. Pokemon.
we're not even going to talk about the Pokemon update. But so apparently Huawei is feeding into your collector obsession. If you need to have all of the colored options. So this is what I don't get though. It can't be cheap from a manufacturing standpoint to have so many different SKUs, right? I like. How do you judge demand?
It's China. It's China. It's just boom. You serve it right. You serve them all with all the colors. all the colors.
Well,
And I don't know where this green thing is. So Evan Blass just leaked out, some marketing materials, and he's got blue, gold, one of the golds, and green. Like, where was the green? There was no green in this. Like,
well, but then
where are
also,
they sending all these colors to?
well, but also it. What I okay, so
And also,
when
there's a 3,100 milliamp hour battery, so that's nice.
well that's great. I'm really happy to hear that. No, what interesting color options bring again is sort of an air of something fresh, of something new. Apple, as much as it drives me crazy that they will hinge so much on just a color change for like a MacBook or an iPhone, they have the right idea that that is the new color for that season. And that's how people around you will know that you recently spent a lot of money on an Apple product. And Samsung, I think, has been getting a little savvier about that fashion standpoint. I thought Huawei was on board. You look at the Honor 8, and for the mid-ranger, that's like one of the most fashionable statements you can make is the blue reflective glass on an Honor 8. Releasing, just dumping all of these colors on the market doesn't make this product feel special or exclusive, or I think it actually might work against Huawei. I think it might make the P10 feel kind of derivative or cheap.
I don't know. I mean, it looks good on the trade show floor. So there's
Oh,
that.
I
mean,
can't
it's
wait to
just
see what kind of display they put for that. I mean, if they really have that many color options available, like I think the display is going to look awesome. You're going to see some fantastic show floor pics, but then you walk into a store and you see like, or it's going to be like certain regions only get 2 colors, and you're like, you can have topaz or emerald, and you're like, but I wanted glacial silver. Oh no.
So the old leaked slide is in Chinese, so it's for a Chinese market. But with MWC being for the European market mostly, you might be seeing something different going on. I would love to see like a little cascade, a little flowering of all the colors in the backs and stuff. I'm waiting on. I just like Rana Chan on the pnweekly hashtag. Am really wanting an orange or canary yellow phone. So if anyone can make that happen, I look to, and they failed me.
I mean, it's still the most ostentatious phone I own, but I have the Lumia 920 in yellow and the Lumia 1520 in yellow. And no phone. Actually, and I've got the 1320 in orange.
Oh, geez.
Boom. Yeah, like there was nothing more eye-catching. Maybe the Hulk green, but the electric yellow.
Microsoft.
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Well, no. The 1520 was a Nokia.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was like did it come out in 14?
The 1520?
I think it came out. No, wait, late 13. The 1520 came out in late 13, so that was before Nokia. Okay.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it was the phone. It was the phone they released right before the 930 because it was the 20s phones, the 920, the 1520, the 1320. So we also have from Harlow Espina, pnweekly. Maybe the P10 will have dual Leica 0.95 aperture cameras. I seriously doubt that these shooters are.
F0.95? What? Wait, what? What?
Okay, so this is actually been something that we've talked about a couple times on the P9. Well, actually, on all of the dual camera sensor phones from Huawei. I don't think we're going to see them significantly change up away from the 2.2, the f-stop f2.2 apertures. I think what they're going to do, that software processing can give you the sort of wider depth of field, the shallower depth of field, I should say. I think it gets a little tricky once you start pushing beyond f1.8. And I think the Galaxy S7 is a great example of the compromise that you make. You get excellent low light sensitivity. It really is a fast shooter. But if you start pushing a little closer to your subject, it can sometimes be tricky getting things in focus, where you want the focus to land, especially at macro distances.
That's a razor thin tolerance right there.
It really is if you're working as close as the camera can get. You get some really pretty bokeh, but if you misfocus or you don't focus exactly where you want, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about phones having this issue. It's actually really exciting. So I'm pretty
Breaking
confident that
news, Leica just leaked its prime lens camera for the Huawei P10.
but I'm pretty confident that if we see any expansion, I seriously doubt we're going to see the P9 trek beyond f2.0. I don't think they're going to go any wider or faster than that.
No, it's going to be tough. I'm still waiting for the day where we get a variable aperture, like an efficient system that can be backed into something like that.
Well, there was actually a really cool story that's not really in our purview of a group of scientists that are working on liquid lenses for eyeglasses,
Ooh.
so that you don't have bifocals anymore. And something like that could help with zooming. Something like that could help with smaller systems that you would like to try and incorporate some kind of variable aperture, stuff like that. I mean, there's potential. It would make the system more fragile, which isn't a great thing for our smartphones. And you probably wouldn't be able to use your camera in sub-freezing temperatures. But there's always that potential.
No, you just stick an 810 in there.
I honestly think at some point what we might see is some sort of direct sensor optic system where the sensor itself focuses and acquires light, and you don't have some kind of glass lens. You probably just have some sort of glass protector on the front of the sensor. I think something like that could be the next application. So if you could imagine having like an APS-C sized, a postage stamp sized square with like a sapphire cover on the back of your phone, and that sensor itself could focus and harness light, then we would have amazing photo and video quality beyond what we're doing with these little teeny tiny image sensors that we're working
on. Oh, that would never happen. It would never happen. It's not going to happen.
I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon. We're talking generations from now before we'd have that kind of sensor tech, but man, I want something like that.
I definitely agree. That would be great to finally just not even have to bother with even mirrorless. Like that'd be great. That'd be terrific. A7S are going down.
I gotta show this off from @PanzerZ. Nah, brah, it will come with the self-dyeing kit. So they're not really going to offer you all of those color options. It's that once you get it, you get a little tiny pellet, and you put that pellet into some water, and then you dunk your P10 in that color dye, and that's how you'll get your glacial silver, streaming gold, or smoky gray.
And then you break open your phone to find the yolk in it, and you just start licking it, and then several toast, as the picture apparently shows with the
it's
egg.
Funny.
I don't know. How the heck did they get that egg in there into the freaking whisk in the first place? I'm wondering what the heck is going on.
Oh no, you've never done that?
How do you get an egg into a whisk?
Oh, whisks are flexible, dude. You just sort of bend the sides of the whisk and you stick the egg in.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I've ever done that without having to, have it cut into the thing, because I've never been able to do that. Like it's always been a tragic story.
You know what? The next next on cooking tips from Juan and Jules. This is from
this episode sponsored by Blue Apron.
I don't. How do you say this Twitter handle? Meme Rang.
The Mean Ranglouts.
I have no idea.
Memoranglout.
But he writes, pnweekly. The big question is, will the phone be available almost instantly? Not all have good logistics like Apple, and I think that's been a huge talking point for us. With a number of smartphone manufacturers, HTC, we're going to announce a phone in January, and you can kind of get it in March. LG, we're going to announce a March release for some parts of the world and an April release for other parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, usually it takes a month. It takes a month before everyone gets their share, stores and whatnot.
I just think there's a huge opportunity for any manufacturer to jump ahead of schedule and say, hey, when we announce tomorrow, go to our website and you can buy it. I think so many consumers would just find that refreshing because we haven't had that for a long time.
We haven't had that for a long time, and I don't know what's going on with the supply chain these days, but it seems very, very constricted right now, with more demand than ever from more manufacturers putting up with these releases. Speaking of retailers, I do want to mention something stupid just because we can. And that is that the Huawei P10 Plus apparently has also 8 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage.
Now, do we really believe that, or do we think that that really is just placeholder text?
Yeah, I mean, especially the case. This phone house from Spain, it's a retailer over there, electronics. Uh, I don't think they should have put out the thing in the first place. The product page doesn't have a picture. It's a 799 euro phone, and that was for the for the P10 Plus. That's the equivalent of the 6 gigabyte RAM, 128 storage version. Yeah. So it's like, really. And there's also 512 megabytes of inbuilt storage with a micro SD slot that can take 512 gigabyte cards. So it's like, yeah, great.
Yeah,
great placeholder text.
Anyone who was reporting on that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's placeholder text.
PGR sourced us for their little article, and we haven't got any blow up.
That's adorable.
And and they mentioned the fact that it's fake too. It's probably fake too. Like, they agree with us, so it's like, hooray, we're on the right side of things. Speaking of exclusives, I don't think that was a proper segue, because that wasn't.
No, it's okay. I kind of feel like you can join me in being terrible at segues too.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But you still have to finish the segue.
I have to do it now.
You started it. You had the terrible. You have to own your shame, Jules. Own your shame. I'm gonna get my screen share up so that you can move us to the next story here.
LG has been on a tear in terms of promoting its G6 phone. It's been official since how long ago? Weeks ago. Like, the G6 name was there, and they sent a little, large placard tease things that are like one-line things. So they sent a thing to ZDNet that was less artificial, more intelligence, which alluded a lot to like smart assistants, Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, whatnot. Who knows? Maybe they're doing their own thing. We don't exactly know.
Well, the rumors for that one were pointing more towards them being the first
one to be Google the non-pixel thing to have Google Assistant. But it could mean more than that. ZDNet put more meaning into that, and I don't think there is more meaning to that than there already is. Android Central got their little thing. Reliability, check. And there's a lot of talk about how boot looping problems have plagued LG phones all the way back since the G3. And one thing or another leads to a boot loop. So it's like, it has this reputation for being a boot loop manufacturer, I guess. So reliability.
Boot loops.
So there's that, and then that was to Android Central, and then we got one. Like, of all freaking outlets, it's like ZDNet, which okay, maybe you could have gone within the CBS family and chose CNET, which would have made more sense. You got freaking Android Central, again, very appropriate. Mobile nations, going into and then we have Pocketnow, which is I think it's very nice. We have great video content.
You see, Pocketnow should have been number one because we were the only outlet that really broke down what the V20 could do. That was it. Everyone else is like, oh, I kind of took this picture of like a frisbee in auto mode and it's just okay, so it's not the best camera. And you're like, nah, brah, that's not how you do it. That's not how you go.
Man, all the shade from Southern California on
That's
the
what
moon.
I'm saying, yo, because we've been living in shade with these storm.
I think it's proper that the rain clouds.
Normally, I'm sharing all the sunshine, yo, but now it's got to share all the shade. This is how
and also, he has the norovirus.
Yeah, and apparently, the Southern California has become a hotbed of the norovirus as well.
As opposed, Chipotle is all over the country. Anyway, so there's
this podcast not sponsored anytime in the future by Chipotle.
Hey, come on. I mean, I love their food. I'm going to eat their food anyways, even though
I usually their new chorizo. It's not terrible. I kind of liked it.
And there's also more press, well, it's not really press. They just they updated their social blog in Korea, and they're talking about their quad DAC on the V20. We're gonna apparently going to get an upgrade on the G6. I don't know how it's gonna, be that much better. Oh, look, you get 0.0002% distortion rates at top volumes. It's the best. Hooray!
I mean,
So
we have a video that's going to be coming out tomorrow on the Pocketnow podcast, Pocketnow YouTube channel to talk sort of just what makes the quad DAC on the V20 interesting and what we might see is in terms of improvement.
The more DACs, the better.
Well, and actually, for anyone who's watching this show now, I'll break down what I'm going to say in that video for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and spoil some
Teasers.
shit.
Yeah.
So it's when we're looking at the differences between the V10. Do I have my props? I do have my props. When we're looking at the differences, I shot this video in my office, so of course my props are right here. Thinking of the difference between the V10 and the V20, we heard all of this noise about the V20 picking up a quad DAC, a quad digital to analog converter. And for a lot of people, it kind of was a buzz termy kind of, like what does that really bring to the table? How could you have multiple signal processors converting one digital stream into one analog stream? Now, to my ears, which again, I'm not going to claim to be any kind of great audiophile. I just work a lot in recording. To my ears, the signal processing happening in the V20 seems to benefit compressed files more than lossless files. And the quad DAC in the V20 seems to color lossy files, MP3s, in a way that's a little bit more interesting than what the V10 did. When I'm feeding both the V10 and the V20 lossless files, 24-bit audio files, I don't really seem to hear as much of a difference between the two phones, even if it's just subtle or if it's just placebo that I'm hearing any kind of significant difference between the V10 and the V20. So that's what I think the G6 might be. Again, doing something kind of interesting is the EQ software, the processing software, that kind of stuff on board. Why in certain markets the V10 had B&O, V20 had B&O branding in some markets and not others. That B&O tweak to how the software would process the audio is some of the things that I think we might see on the G6. Really what's exciting is seeing a G series phone with a V20 style DAC and amp. So I'm hoping we see all of the same benefits with like output impedance matching, where if you have really high quality headphones, it'll crank that amp to make sure that you're properly driving those headphones. But aside from that, Jules, I think you might actually be right that you can make all of these subtle little tiny improvements. You can improve the separation in stereo crosstalk. You can improve the signal to noise ratio. You can lower the noise floor by a tiny little fraction and then still rightfully claim it's a better DAC or it's a better headphone jack experience. I think that's kind of what we're going to see. I think the G6 is going to be iterative. I don't think it's going to be revolutionary.
I think that LG is really trying to differentiate beyond, I mean, they're already behind the ball with the Snapdragon 835 not getting anywhere to other manufacturers. Really, and also it's just, glass. It's like, oh, there's glass here, glass there, and they want to be cool and try out, something metal or be the only metal phone for the spring the spring lineup.
How weird is that? But
yeah,
okay. No,
odd.
So I mean, a couple things. I'm hoping that LG will also get after its sort of brand identity. If they can go out there and say the G6 does this different and does this better than another phone, I think the Qualcomm 821 becomes a less important talking point.
Yeah,
it's something that so many people take for granted. You plug headphones.
I think it's always been about features. It's always been about the consumer features, and
right.
You can camera, like, oh, all right, so it has more megapixels, the better megapixels, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean you would have had I think that was the most important spec to consumers, and not about the whole.
I just think I think if you're talking about winning hearts and minds, you stand to win so many hearts and minds talking about audio.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, so many people take it for granted, and so many people assume that like, oh yeah, well my like Samsung has great audio, and I plug my headphones in and it sounds awesome. You're like, it really doesn't though.
Well, the first time in a
It's
long
good, but
time,
it's not terrific.
it's waterproof. Like there's that too. There's
Yeah.
going to be a bigger screen. Like that's something that you can physically see and sense, and like hey,
Right.
this is cool. Like it's something visual. It's something that is somewhat useful, I guess. So there's always these considerations that you have to take. It's not just about the whole numbers game, even though we're kind of also sorting out numbers in different ways. Kyle Ruggles, long time no see on the PN Weekly hashtag,
Yeah.
talking about the Light L16 camera. What is that? You have more
The
experience.
Light L16 was that camera, that concept camera. I don't know if it was ever really sold.
Because all I'm thinking about here is Lytro, and I'm
No, no,
not
no, no.
sure if
The
that's.
the L16 was the one that had a whole bunch of little individual camera sensors that would then merge
Oh wait,
all of
well,
those.
yeah, it was like that weird backed phone. It was like all
Yeah,
the camera
it
sensors.
looked
Oh
like it had a bunch of
gosh,
pustules
man.
on the back of it.
Oh man,
I,
and
I like I think it looks so ugly, but the tech I think is undeniably cool. But what it would do is it
mm,
would combine all of the output from these different sensors and lenses. And each lens I think had different focal lengths so that
oh,
you could zoom essentially. So it would put the image together in a way where you could zoom, and then it would rapidly also allow you the ability to do things like focus after the fact and change aperture after the fact. I mean, it was a
yeah,
really interesting
no,
concept that I think could do well on the back of a phone someday.
no
Um,
need for light fields, just all that stuff. And by the way, Kyle, we can't do much about how YouTube handles its chat and
Well,
its
we're what I'm gonna
so
yeah, and unfortunately, like the proper old school Q&A is just dead for
so
Hangout, so we can't go back to that. But I
yeah,
am probably gonna sneak in there at some point. I don't have it up right now, but I might do a little weeding today. We'll see. We have a
yeah,
ton of. I mean, there was more news to talk about the G6, but there are a ton of questions. So instead of
indeed.
doing our bullet points, we're going to go through those. First off, we've got a couple questions early from the show from Andrew Wallace at Fat Produce, king of the Star Trek GIF. Um, two questions here. How much real world camera improvement do you think the Snapdragon 835 will bring? And do you think the G6 will stand out or be that big of an improvement over the V20? What do you think,
Uh,
Jules?
you're gonna have to take the first one in this.
Uh,
I'm gonna,
okay, so I mean, like some of the stuff they're talking about with the 835, I think will actually bring some. Again, I think a lot of this stuff is going to be subtle. Whether or not consumers really respond to this and say, this is a Qualcomm feature that has radically improved my camera experience on my phone is dubious. But some of the processing improvements will definitely be welcome when we're talking about ultra high definition video. I'm curious to see because Qualcomm has been talking about a focusing system, which is similar to what Samsung employs on the S7, the dual pixel system
Mhm.
that Samsung uses. Qualcomm, I don't know if they're looking at actually licensing dual pixel or if they've just found something similar where essentially any pixel on the camera sensor can be used as a focusing point.
Wasn't
Um,
that originally from Canon? I think it was like on the hun.
Canon originated dual pixel, and I
Yeah.
want to say I I I could be making this up, but I want to say that Samsung is licensing that, not that they invented their own version of it. I
Oh
could
boy.
completely be wrong there. Again, someone correct me in the
Google to the
comments if I am.
rescue. Let's see. Samsung.
But if Qualcomm can pull that off, I think that would actually be a nice shot in the arm for most other camera systems. We got used to laser assisted focus and phase detection autofocus, but Samsung's dual pixel is formidable. It is probably still the best focusing system on any mobile device. It's definitely one of the snappiest. So if all phones can start to benefit from that, if they're using Qualcomm chipsets, I think that would be huge. As for whether or not the G6 is going to stand out or be significantly better than the V20, if we're looking at the Qualcomm 821 as the chipset in the G6, I don't think we're going to see a radically better phone. I think, again, it's going to be subtle improvements, a couple software tweaks, and we still have yet to see if LG is going to pull their head out of their booty and give the G series phones some of the capabilities of the V series phones. I'd love to see manual video controls. I'd love to see expanded audio controls. I'd love to see better microphones, those kinds of things. If you really care about your V series LG, if they don't migrate to a G series, then you're not going to have any interest in a G6.
So, the quick thing, and all I can find, the best I can find at least, is from the Fred Miranda forums that it's likely, but Fujifilm also has a predated technology that could, as well have grounds for dual pixel.
Gotcha.
So there's that. In terms of what I think, I think more muscle, the better as we try and edge into 4K. The processing, it's the processing time that's always going to be, you want that to be better. But in terms of what instructions you give to the sensors and to the Snapdragon 835 to process the picture, for how it is,
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's those instructions that matter most. And if you're having to compile more instructions that take much more effort to do, like say advanced HDR or something like that, then I mean, I think in terms of that, the silicon game is still going to be pretty.
I
Pretty
disagree.
intense.
I actually think software means more there, and I think the phone that proves that very well is the Pixel.
Really?
When the Pixel's rocking a Qualcomm an 821, and it has radically fast HDR processing, it's got a great low light mode, which is a burst shot, where it combines multiple images into one, and it doesn't seem to work that much slower than a phone that's just sort of taking a traditional long exposure. I think if a manufacturer were really savvy about their software layout, they could make up the performance deficit on an 821 versus what the 835 will bring in hardware.
So I've been using the Nexus 5X, which has an 808 as a daily driver. So that's where my experience has been
Yeah, the
coming from
5X is a
recently.
dog. Come on,
So
Jules.
yeah,
No, I mean
I was
seriously though,
feeling that.
when people are praising the Pixel camera, I think one of the things they're most impressed about is how quickly that thing can process images. And then you go over to a Qualcomm 820 powered phone, and man, this HDR takes forever. That's software, man. That's software optimization, and Google really getting ahead of their own camera game. The expenses, you have to have a crummy lens on the Pixel and terrible audio for video, and that's
You give and
bummer,
take.
So this is from @PanzerZ, something I didn't think about when the G6 was announced, but that 2:1 aspect ratio. When you're rocking Nougat, that means if you go split screen, because we were showing off the split screen that Ed was Ed had linked, that means you're going to have a perfect 1:1 and 1:1 split screen.
So you know what the annoying thing is
for the split screen. That's actually kind of cool.
The annoying thing is that LG just started its barrage of predating, pre-release press releases, and it's just like, oh, the first thing that they talk about is the 2.35, or no, it's the 2:1 screen, and they've branded it as full vision. And they're talking about a new camera mode on the UX 6.0. That's, hey, it's square camera mode. You got top square for the viewfinder, and then the bottom square for review. It's like amazing. You can do a whole bunch of things with two squares. We're gonna have the best screen ever.
I am not really going to be a big fan of square mode. I think it's silly that the iPhone still has a square mode. But for other apps, when you go split screen, I think that's going to be pretty sweet.
Squares are the best aesthetic.
Yeah.
Period.
So getting back into from Harlow Espina, PN Weekly, my V20 is amazing, but sadly, I don't take advantage of the DAC. I'm just rocking my free pair of B&O H3 earbuds. Got news for you. If you go in and you turn on the high-quality DAC, then yes, you are taking advantage of the DAC. What you're not taking advantage of is the amp. So you're still getting a very high-quality signal processing. You're just not getting the full volume, the full gain output of the V20. And we've got a ton of other comments here.
But we have to move on at some point, so we're going to have to table that for a few minutes as we talk about Samsung's imminent arrival at MWC 2017. What won't be there is the Galaxy S8, and there have been talks about, oh, there's going to be a video shown, and oh, there's going to be a bendable phone that's going to be held in secret, and we can't report to you about what that is and whatnot. But apparently, the best thing that we can get also is, In Jong-ri coming over to Barcelona and saying and giving us a date. Like that's when the Galaxy S8 event is going to happen. There you go. Thank you. Good night. So there's
it's like Samsung saying we'll try, but we'll try to try. We'll try to try.
We'll try to try, but try, and they're going to keep trying until they've got 16 million displays for the S8 ready and raring to go. Apparently, that's the report from out of Korea, and the hope is that they get the rest of the year off to about 55 million units. So, it's up from last year. The expectations, at least, are up from last year. They're expecting to provide more plus models, so the 6.2-inch models, at a rate about 5 to 3 or something. I'm not exactly sure, because I know it was 7 to 3,
right?
For the S7 Edge and S7 last year. So I'm not sure.
I think this is absolutely the right play, because one, we did see the S7 Edge outperform the S7, and then two, we're still making up the gap of people who might have been holding out for a Note. So increasing that ratio, I think, is absolutely the right play, focusing on the larger device.
Indeed. So that's the hope right there. I mean, it's a critical time. You said the Note 7, so
so everyone take a shot.
Man, still doing that. Anyways, so like what's the hopes here? What are especially because of its late in the season starts? Do you really think that they're going to be able to blow up in that compacted timeline?
I'm hoping.
Word.
But it's also kind of what we were talking about before. Companies making an announcement. The G6 likely won't be in North America until what, the first week of April? Is that what we're expecting?
The first week of April, and then a couple of weeks afterwards is when apparently that's expected.
I kind of feel like that actually gives Samsung just enough time to get their advertising in place. When you're talking to someone about replacing a phone and you say, well, the G6 is out now, but if you wait a couple weeks, we'll have the Galaxy S8 out also. That to me creates a perfect scenario for Samsung, for consumers who are going to play the wait and see game.
Well, what's pissing me off is that the G6 is launching, sooner than that. It's going to be launching in March in Korea. So it's like, but everywhere else, it's like, okay, great, make us wait.
Well, and it's the same.
Get any lead time.
Well, so it's the problem that HTC is running into, where the U Ultra is already out in Malaysia or something like that.
Mid-January launch, and March 1st, pretty much in the European markets, US markets.
Right, but I mean, like, it's already available to buy sort of feature restricted in a couple places already.
Yeah, let me check out HTC, because our friend Mr. Mobile, Michael Fisher, has
he already put out a review where half the review is, and there are a bunch of things that I couldn't even try on the phone yet because HTC hasn't released those features. So you put out a product that's incomplete. Again, if anyone was considering buying the HTC U, now they're going to wait on those software updates to see if HTC's AI is really going to be worth anything. You've got LG putting out the G6 in March, which is great. That's early. That's ahead of the game. Awesome. Except for the rest of the world, where it's going to be out in April. And then it's just a couple weeks until the Galaxy S8. This is for a company that had this huge gap because of the Note 7. All these manufacturers could have tried to exploit that. We're actually leading right into just a later start to the year. Everyone's going to wait until the S8 and the S8 Plus are out, and then the real smartphone comparisons will start then, as opposed to really getting these things out in people's hands, getting people excited about products other than Samsung.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Excitement. It's really palpable at
I
this
think this
point.
is going to end up being a good year for Samsung. I think they are going to capitalize on a very conservative market, and I guarantee you we're going to see an insane marketing push from Samsung. They're going to be doubling down on their marketing dollars, and any company that could have maybe given them a real shot at some competition is going to wonder why their phones aren't selling. We put our phone out like a whole 2 weeks before the Galaxy. Why didn't people buy
Well,
it?
let's hope the Note 8 comes out before the iPhone does, because by then, apparently, everyone thinks everything. Well, I think everything's going to shut down. Just everyone's going to bow down to the iPhone 8, and apparently there's going to be. Well, let's start off with the screen size here, because we've been talking about several numbers in terms of the size of the AMOLED screen. It's going to be flexible so that it wraps around the body of the iPhone 8, which is going to be this $1,000 phone. It's going to be terrific. It's going to be the showboat that will be flanked by two iPhone 7s models, more conventional types.
Right.
So, what does this iPhone 8 display entail? So, it's a 5.8-inch physical unit. And that's the number that we've been talking about for a long time now. But we've also been talking about 5-inch kind of middle units, and we thought that was going to be associated with a conventional iPhone. Then I introduced the thought that maybe one of the KGI notes mentioned like a 5.1 to 5.2-inch display or something. There's a whole bunch of confusion as to how many numbers there were for this thing, but apparently we finally have a freaking diagram to show off. Took KGI security is a pretty long time to put this up, but hey,
Right.
good job finally. 5.8-inch physical display, but it's going to wrap around, and we're gonna see this applied to a phone that's about 4.7 inches, or the same dimensions as a 4.7-inch iPhone.
Right.
And that in itself, the phone is the end result is going to be a little take away a little function area. So that would be the home button. That would be maybe camera. I don't know what's going to be in that function area, but there's going to be important permanent stuff in there.
I think there's going to be a Vitamix in there.
There's going to be a Vitamix in there, and we're going to see all the we're going to see all the nutrients.
All the nutrients.
Pre-digested.
Pre-digested nutrients.
5.15 display area. 5.151. Can't say words and numbers. 5.15-inch display area, and that's going to be an effective resolution of 2436 by 1125. Apple loving those odd little ratios.
Why bother with industry standard resolutions and aspect ratios?
They did that for the 5.5-inch thing and the Plus model, and it was like, no, we've had enough of that. But 521 PPI definitely does away with that little retina thing that they've been talking about for the longest time. Yeah. So 2.17 to 1 is the actual thing, and I believe anamorphic widescreen is 2.35 to 1 or 2.39.
2.35, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're getting closer and closer to that kind of ratio for your cinematic purposes, and your feature presentation will be up soon after a look at these previews.
Yes.
So $1,000 for all this stuff, and most of that apparently is going to go to the OLED screen, which are a lot of the bulk cost. Like it's the OLED screen compared to LCD screens, it's twice the price. So the rumors say. And apparently, there's going to be a lot more of them than we first thought. So, switching over to the story about Samsung display, apparently Apple is asking for 60 million more. When you talk this fast while you're hungry, you are not doing yourself any favors.
Poor
60
Jules.
million
I
more
don't let Jules
OLED.
eat before we do the show. I was like, Jules, I need you hungry. I need you attentive. I need you like ravenous. And then we do the show. And he's like,
Yeah,
okay.
and the spit really just falls out of the mouth, and it's just awesome. 60 million more OLED displays for the iPhone or whatever. We aren't sure. Apple has been ordering a lot of them from Samsung Display because, of course, they're pretty much the only big player in the OLED industry right now for mobile. And this contract for 60 million displays is worth 4.35 billion. You'll go back to last April, they ordered 100 million displays, and that was $7 billion. So, that's a big stockpile to have. And considering that
Right.
in a given year, 200 million iPhones are sold, and you're splitting this between three models, they're expecting the iPhone 8, despite its $1,000+ price point,
Yep.
that's rumored, to take 60% of that 200 million in a year. That's insane. That's crazy. So, I, yeah, and it definitely requires a lot more help. I'm not sure how many of those panels have been fulfilled, which is a concern because the maximum we've been talking about maximum capacity, and
Yeah.
it's only been like in the mid 5 digits per
What is
month.
it here in the article? It's something like the company hopes to get
Well,
two major AMOLED
so
plants online, one by summer, the other in a couple of years, to be
so
able
that's
to
a
produce up
Chinese
to
plant that Apple has been considering
right.
BOE,
Right,
which
but
provides Xiaomi some.
that's exactly the point you're making. Is they hope to be able to produce 96,000 displays a month when we're
Yeah,
talking about hundreds of millions of iPhones.
48,000 for one plant, which is going to go up in the summer. And Apple's been looking at the plant because it wants to diversify and lower the cost, but not at this rate. Not when everyone's trying to get in. You cannot convince OLED manufacturers to waste away their billions of dollars of investment into foundries, and then just can I ask for a discount? Like really? Like is Apple really going to do that?
Right.
So yeah, this I don't this whole when we talk about supply constriction, this is where we see problems. We're going to see this for the next, I think, 2 or 3 years,
Well, but this
and
is
I'm
also, I
not
mean,
sure if I like that.
this is also, when we start talking about constraint, though, this is what's going to really start messing with the market pricing for these types of devices as well. So we've got from MineCoolCraft on Twitter using the pnweekly hashtag, $1,000, is it worth it? Or should I wait for the next iPhone like the iPhone 8s? We really can't even address questions of worth it. It's what will the market bear and what can the market sustain? And if we're having this kind of supply chain issue or supply chain fulfillment constraint on things like OLED displays, then that's what these products will cost. The more demand you have for that, it's going to increase the price if you can't also similarly raise the manufacturing to adjust for that demand. That's what I think is going to be really interesting. Is it's not even really going to be a question of does this technology really warrant the price? It's just, can you even get the technology to put into the phone? It really does kind of make, when you look at those numbers and you're talking about manufacturing plants opening up to supply thousands of displays for a company that's hoping to sell millions of phones, it kind of makes that $1,000 price point not seem as outlandish as it might have when you first heard that rumor.
I mean, I'm not surprised at this point. I'm just, I mean, I don't think I have been actually. I think the first pin on the $1,000 thing was the Chinese imports tax, because Donald Trump is in office and we're not even sure how hair trigger the situation is.
Right.
I mean he freaking asked his did he ask James Mattis like 3 a.m. in the morning, like whether a weak dollar or strong dollar helps or hurts the economy? Like
Um,
I expect anything to happen at this point. Like this is and then you have this compressing the thing. Like sooner or later, I'm not sure if I want to be paying MacBook prices for
Well,
all
and
this
but
shiz.
it also raises the point, like, so just focusing on OLED screens, and this is actually something in the live chat and why no other company is making an AMOLED. Could a company actually disrupt there? You know, we know LG makes some killer OLED panels, and they've sort of walked away from trying to make them for phones. Like since the Flex 2 was a bust,
Yeah,
they
plastic
haven't really.
OLED was kind of a bust. Yeah,
Well, but an OLED focused on being able to actually bend, like, you know, a flexible plastic screen, that doesn't mean that the panel couldn't be utilized in some other form factor for some other product, but it seems like they've completely walked away from that market of making smaller form factor OLED screens for mobile devices. Like,
I
could
think the
LG
quality and
walk into
reliability.
this space and shake up? Because we know LG Display is actually a separate subset from
Yeah,
LG
yeah.
LG appliances and LG Mobile. They aren't.
I mean, it's a whole chable.
Yeah,
So it's like it's a conglomerate, and and the same thing as Samsung. That's why we talk about Samsung like this. They got their own chip making. Yeah, I get that. And but in terms of POLED, I'm not sure if there was that quality rate because you go. I mean, so when we talk about the first G Flex, it had that papery quality to
yeah.
grays and whites, and it was much improved on the G Flex too. I get that. I'm not sure if there was the yield or the proper rates for all the major metrics that you need in order to see it as a sustainable, popular thing, other than for like smaller form factor. I think those would be the best bread and butter in terms of their characteristics. But I'm talking way over my head now, so it's like.
Well, but that's what I think is so interesting is so I mean, like, acknowledging what you just said, there's also just the notion of Samsung is going to be facing constraint. We're looking at companies opening up new manufacturing, and LG doesn't want to make money. LG's just absent from this conversation. Apple's going to have to supply millions of OLED panels. Is the manufacturing so constrained to those plants that LG can't?
LG is definitely making an investment, but again, they're one of the 2018 pack. They have their focus has more been on TVs, and in order to get those that size down, you got to fit more technology into that much more space. It requires more investment into R&D for them, and their TV business has been doing just as well for them as anything
Yeah.
else. So yeah, this is for them, they've been kind of caught by the foot on mobile OLED. So it's unfortunate, but we talk about OLEDs, sure. I'm not sure how much attention Apple's paying to flexible LCDs as well. They're a
Right.
great alternative as to wrap around the body, and they've been pretty reliable in terms of quality so far. I mean, you got JDI and Sharp doing their own thing, so it's like those are pretty reputable sources.
Right.
I'm not sure why Sharp isn't making more of a fuss about their technology. I
Well,
understand that
I kind of feel
Foxconn.
like, I mean, I kind of feel like flexible LCD still hasn't quite proven itself for manufacturing a popular phone at scale. You know what I mean? Like Samsung has done all of the legwork to show us, yeah, AMOLED is great to do this
I
stuff.
don't I don't think they'll get
Um,
that test. I don't think they'll be able to get that public test. They're just probably going to have to deal with Apple itself. I mean, this
yeah,
is, I saw those moves as very geared
the moves like
towards
Jagger.
client number one, and that was basically all right. You know what? Let's we're going. I'm done talking about
No,
the
because
iPhone 8.
we actually do need to move on to this next story. I'm gonna jump back into screen share here because another just interesting bit. We're sort of deep
It was
on
fun.
business. And this is another one
General
that's sort
fun.
of right up some of the conversations we've been having recently about Apple. So this is a little bit more kind of in the vein of some of the political discussion that we've been getting into recently, and it's uh, what can Apple do to provide value to shareholders, considering it's got hundreds of billions of dollars locked away overseas, and it's been going into debt to fulfill shareholder payouts here in the United States, as opposed to repatriating money where it would then have to pay United States taxes on that.
So let's talk about the external factors first, and I'm going to make this brief because this is boring stuff to y'all. I understand that. So the barrier that's preventing all this money from coming back in from the international markets is corporate tax, repatriation tax. You have to move it through the border of the U.S. You pay 35%, or whatever the actual rate is. Tax codes kind of crapshoot basically.
Yeah.
But it's Luca Maestri, who is the CFO, Chief Financial Officer for Apple, said that it's punitive for companies. It creates international tensions across jurisdictions because of this deferral system that's in place in the United States. Now he's betting on the administration that's in place right now to lift some of that burden. So Apple can, return more for investors. The other side of that is taxing the import tax, basically. So that means, placing more costs on U.S. companies that decide to go outside for manufacturing, and just applying flat whatever tax, 20%, 30%. In some cases, China. Talking about China, which a lot of the Asian supply chain is for mobile tech.
Right.
Trump has talked about 45%, which is unheard of, and actually would be is.
And I don't even know why we would even give it any real consideration that he would try to do something like that, because then all of his his suits would cost a lot more because they're all manufactured overseas.
But I mean, he doesn't pay attention to that, does he now? He's
perish.
He can't even read. My street. I'm sorry. I'm trying to take myself seriously. I don't crack up.
No,
so Maestri thinks that U.S. companies should face lower foreign earnings tax rates because if U.S. companies want to invest in the internet age, where you do more business outside of the U.S. So there's that, and then overall asking for fewer taxes. They want fewer taxes coming in and fewer taxes going out.
Right.
Because
don't we all?
It's in their interest. And the way that Apple wants to do that, is hinting at the White House, hinting at lawmakers, is that they're going to talk about how Apple has 2 million jobs invested in the U.S. and billions of dollars as well across the U.S. as well as the Asian supply chain invested over the past decade, along with if you want more of that in the future, we definitely are planning for more of that in the future.
Yeah.
And we would like to do that. Shifty eyes. And
again, from their chief financial officer, who definitely doesn't sound like he was named after a mob boss.
Are we really going to discriminate against Italian Americans?
In no way does he sound like he is a member of some kind of organized crime family. I am saying he does not resemble someone who would make veiled threats as it regards, corporate payouts and the billions of dollars that would maybe potentially change hands between consumers, corporations, and governments.
No, you really want to know something.
He does not have anything to do with business practices that would resemble that.
I think he could run for the mayor of City of Providence.
No, okay, so Jules, I'm really torn on this story because I, as a bleeding heart liberal, I feel, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, that the U.S. tax code needs massive reform, right? In how businesses are charged, and how individuals are charged, and how money is distributed between
put a flat tax on it. Herman Cain 999. Go boom.
No, I viscerally disagree with that. But no. I think there's a major question there, and between liberals and conservatives, we just need to sit down and find where we want to draw those lines. And I think we all agree there are major problems here. What I also have a major problem with as it regards to Apple, though, is this is a company that corporations exist to provide value to their shareholders. So Apple is going to do everything in its power to pay as little, to exploit every loophole, to avoid every payment. And we have a current administration where our president has gone out there to say, oh, I don't pay taxes because I'm smart. I find that to be a very un-American sentiment when we have roads and bridges that are collapsing, when we have major problems with our healthcare system, when we need to fund our military. We have very real things that money goes towards, aside from my liberal bleeding heart pet projects where, I want to train gay dogs to deliver Girl Scout cookies to veterans. I would like to see tax dollars go to that because I think it would be adorable.
So you know what, the one good thing about the populism movement and the nationalism that has been growing in this in the U.S. for because of this election, because of this bastion figurehead
right.
That is Trump, is good for is that you get to convince more companies that if you're doing American stuff, if you're an American company, then you should be a little more patriotic. He even called Tim Cook patriotic in one of his calls with the reporters. Yeah. So it's like you're putting that kind of pressure on them, and you're kind of urging them to do things. I mean, he's also like, you saw him with Carrier. I was like, oh, I'm going to save 800 jobs when in fact it was, or 1100. No, it was 1100 jobs. In fact, it was more like 800, and there were other terms and conditions, and a lot of them were already supposed to be were already saved anyways. So it's like there's a whole man.
Well, but that's also why Apple becomes so precious to this conversation, though, is, the health of Apple sort of dictates the health of the tech industry, the consumer electronics industry. And so we have a company, they're going to do everything in their power to not pay out those rates. And when we look at their business practices in Europe, when we look at their tax havens in Ireland, where they're already paying pennies on the billions in taxes that they probably should be paying into the UK and the EU. Now we have to say they're separate because of Brexit. When we start looking at those types of business practices, and then we also see, they're not veiled threats. I'm being hyperbolic because I think it's amusing and I think it's funny. But, oh, if only we could bring this money back to the United States, but we just can't. Giving them any additional leash to not pay taxes, I feel is a very irresponsible precedent to set, because then it's going to be exploited. It's already being exploited by a number of other major companies, but there's no incentive for them to then pay out what they actually should pay out, even if we were to cut the tax rates for Apple or for other major companies like them. And so I'm really torn on this situation right now because of the fact that Apple is sitting on a massive war chest that they refuse to repatriate because of the current tax code. That I don't want to change it. That was money that was made during the time where Apple knew what the United States tax code was. I kind of feel like there's a responsibility there towards Apple being able to utilize water in the United States, Apple being able to utilize roads in the United States, Apple being able to provide value for companies that are using existing infrastructure of the United States. That was the deal. That they knew what it was when they started doing business as a United States-based company before they moved their office to Ireland. That kind of stuff is a known entity. So now to change it just so they can bring that money back to the United States and pay less in taxes on it, I feel is not the right move to make. It almost feels like that's a company that has the leverage to blackmail a government to give them less money than they probably should have. And in the meantime, they'll just go into debt to satisfy shareholder concerns. But at the same time, I want to see a real grown-up conversation. And from some of the people that are in our live chat now, I think a lot of us would identify somewhere in the moderate spectrum. I'll call myself a crazy liberal. That's fine. But we all want to say, we need to fix the tax code, but I don't want to fix it just because Apple is holding $200 billion out of our reach. That's not why I want to fix the tax code. I want to fix the tax code because it's been kind of broken for a while, but not because Apple's holding a metaphorical gun to our heads in not paying their financial duties here.
Yeah. I want to switch around some topics.
I worked up a sweat on that one, Jules. I'm all sweaty now.
Well, I want to talk about ZTE and the U.S. government again, because apparently
All right, I'll go back into screen share. You do it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I want you're going to sweat a little bit more about this because
All right,
apparently,
that's excellent.
if you like ZTE phones,
Which
you
I
might,
do.
yeah, you might be having a little bit trouble, or they might be having a little bit trouble come soon if they don't get either their sanctions reprieve extended by the U.S. Commerce Department on February 27th, or they just do away with the whole sanctions entirely. Now, the charges stem back to 2012 when ZTE had secret dossiers about their business with sanctioned entities in Iran, and that's of course, U.S. and Iran are not good friends, so boom, that's a slap against ZTE. First sanctions proposals were back in 2016, early 2016, and it's been a year since then. They've had like several reprieves, and ZTE has been working with the government in their investigation. That was all during the last year of the Obama in this administration. Excuse me.
Right.
What happens now? This is going to be the first one that Donald Trump's administration has to deal with, especially considering that a lot of positions across the government that need appointed officials are not being filled at this time. Some of them might not be able to. The current system, it might not be able to either allow a reprieve, or it just might be that they have enough control, and Donald Trump is against the idea of having ZTE, do okay. Just approve the sanctions and go ahead with the thing. ZTE's supply chain is made a third of it is made up of U.S. dependent products. So when we're talking about Qualcomm, when we're talking about Microsoft and Google and all those vendors, this is kind of a teeter point, and the company has warned investors this is an iffy situation right now. So, what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, this is another reason why I've been frustrated with the Trump administration, because we can't believe anything that our president says. That he will make a comment of bravado from a position of some kind of simulated strength, that he then might walk back, or he might double down on, or might take even further. So ZTE's not wrong. I mean, their warnings call to investors is completely sound, because we don't know what Trump is actually going to enact when it comes to this kind of policy. And it's what makes this all the more frustrating when we saw such amazing progress from Chinese companies over 2016. ZTE being at the forefront of that with the Axon 7 here in the United States, to think that then, because of the Trump administration, that we would have had to have paid a ridiculous sort of import tax, because it would have been filtered to consumers.
Yeah.
We end up footing the bill for those kinds of political decisions, that a $400 phone would have become like a $600 phone. This is what makes, because again, I'm kind of wrapped up in this personally, because one of my passions is mobile technology. Obviously, this is something that's been ongoing with ZTE for a period of time before the Trump administration, and now the situation is being exacerbated because of, I don't know what word I want to use there, but the inconsistency or the unreliability of the comments coming from the White House now are making this a lot murkier and a lot more difficult than it needs to be.
And if there's one objective factor, and that all that creates, it's uncertainty. And you know how much the market loves that. So
investors love taking gambles and risks and not knowing what
all those shorts, man. All those shorts. But there, and this is also a big this also may prove to be a big stumbling block for its US expansion efforts too, since they have to deal with clients domestically in order to be here. And considering that their consumer phones are not doing well at all in China, the US has been maybe like an upcoming bright spot for them.
Yeah.
This is not opportune at all. I mean, any time would not be opportune, but especially in this case, with the cards stacked up against them, not good.
Yeah. I mean, like, to borrow Ed Modlin's favorite hashtag right now, sad.
Sad.
So, and actually, I mean, I know there were some concerns from people because a couple weeks ago, our live chat on YouTube was pretty gross. Right now, I'm so sorry, Tassine, if that's not how you pronounce your name. Tassine Khan is going through a bunch of political commentary. William Morton had some really interesting points. Manisha Sharma also was joining the conversation. I mean, like it's been a pretty robust conversation because again, this stuff impacts people on a global level. We all have an interest in technology. Anyone who would be caught watching this podcast anyway. This is why I've been so vocal for people who have been watching our videos and listening to our podcasts outside of the United States. We have a pretty good market for advocacy and for protest here in the United States. So many countries and so many governments are waiting to see what kind of policy our country enacts, that I think it's up to you guys and gals to get ahead of the conversation in your own regional areas, to try and force your own lawmakers to set your own policy before the United States stumbles their way through similar situations, and then everyone just decides to jump on board what could be potentially very bad policy. So again, this is my little call to action, my soapboxing. I do this every couple of months, it feels like, but get after your regional, your local officials, your MPs, your mayors, your elected officials, and try and drive the discussion before we figure it out for you. Because chances are very likely that whatever the United States does over the next couple of years when it comes to some of this global economic policy will probably not benefit us geeks on the ground. It's probably not going to be great moves if what we're seeing plays out. If we take, and especially if we take our current administration at their word, other regions around the world are probably not going to like what we're doing.
I mean, we're already seeing,
more than in any other time, our voices need to be a part of this conversation. Right now, geeks aren't really listened to. And this is the perfect opportunity for us to join the conversation, to add substance to the conversation, and to help drive some policy, because we're the people that actually know what's going on. We're the people that help make phone purchasing decisions for family and friends. We can join the conversation for politicians and lawmakers too.
And if everything goes to crap, well, at least you can turn down requests for to provide technical support. That'd be great.
Yeah, right. Because actually we could use that help too. Apparently Google could use that help with their video streaming service.
Google definitely needs help. All right, let's try and wrap some of these stories up here.
You want to just blitz through them real quick?
Yeah, Xiaomi Pine Cone. It's been a chipset that's been in the making for a long time, apparently. We didn't know the name of the things going on here, but apparently it had funded a new branch company called Beijing Pine Cone Electronics, and acquired some assets from LEDcore, or acquired the actual LEDcore, which is a subsidiary of Datang Telecom in China. And they've been sort of collaborating on a new chipset. We're not sure if this is reactionary towards Qualcomm, and its A35. It's patent licensing practices that have driven people insane. So there's just a whole bunch of other factors going on with the Xiaomi Mi 6. Not certain to get this device, but apparently within the next month. So before March 12th or something, perhaps MWC. I mean, they're not going to be at MWC, but we might get an announcement sometime around
I'm
then.
actually really excited about this. I'm still super bummed that Xiaomi hasn't moved more aggressively towards any kind of North American strategy. Being the spoiled slob of an American that I am, I want all the phones, and I'd like to be talking about Xiaomi more frequently. But if Huawei
I mean, I'll
has
get you
shown
a,
its own
a
thing.
Hatsune Miku Redmi Note 4X if you want.
Right on, do it. No, but this is where I also do my special shout out to Huawei. If we've learned anything, is that you can compete, you can make your own chipset. I'm sure it's a substantial investment in R&D and getting your hardware up to spec and everything, but the Kirin 950,
And
960,
yeah.
and their mid-ranger, what's the Kirin, is it the Kirin 650?
600 series or so, yeah.
All super competitive chipsets right out of the gate. Like my first experiences with Kirin chipsets were right on par with everything that I liked about their sort of comparable Qualcomm brands. And I have a lot of faith that Xiaomi will be able to execute this kind of stuff well too.
Moving on to Fossil, which has been in a little bit of a rut with investors as most of its luxury items. It doesn't just sell smartwatches as we
Right.
have come to know them on Pocketnow, but it sells leathers, it sells jewels, it sells those kind of frilly frou-frou things, and all those sales have been going down. And investors are worried that the smart wearables push that they've been on, and Fossil has been on a smart wearables push,
Right.
if you know what I mean. Skagen, Misfit, all those, yeah, all those efforts. The company is going to double down on it, and that's the hope that. And I would say maybe focus on Asia a little bit, because that was the only geography logged that was growing, at least in terms of sales. So there's that. 300 SKUs of products for
Whoa.
wearables. Now, I mean, even when you consider, the whole different types of bands and colors and all that stuff, that's still
Right. That's quite a bit.
pretty insane.
Well, because is that when
Yeah,
you say there are that many SKUs, is that because we're also factoring in their
yeah,
other?
we're factoring in the whole the unit that does Skagen, Misfit,
Oh, okay,
Q,
okay,
and
okay,
all
okay.
that
So I
stuff.
mean, it's not just 300 fossil SKUs. It's Skagen and Misfit, and I think they also do the Michael Kors
That's
watches.
scheduled for this year. I mean, I
Okay,
wouldn't be surprised, but I still wouldn't be surprised if if it weren't 12 products or 15 products within this year. But I'm not sure.
well, I'm kind of hoping that again, what we saw from Tag Heuer. Again, I think there's a good argument to be made for luxury, for jewelry, for fashion. It's a recognizable brand. It won't have the heirloom or legacy of a nicer watch, but a $300 fossil watch probably wasn't going to be a hand me down, an heirloom product for your grandkids either. So I'm kind of hoping they can bring some of that legitimacy back. I just think right now, I think much faster than tablets found their sort of peak and are going to plateau. I think we're really close to smartwatches. Kind of the people who want them probably have one, and the people who use them are probably well satisfied with their solution, unless you're a massive Pebble fan like I am, and you're looking
I
for a new
mean,
solution
so
for your smartwatch. But
to your point there, single-digit growth recorded in the global wearables market over the past year, and
that's
then there's
probably
also the
not
Apple
great.
Watch. But I mean, there is hope to jumpstart back some growth, and that is reliant on cellular, seeing what
Yeah,
standalone stuff can do. So they're on the right track with Android Wear if they put out some Android Wear 2 stuff. I mean, they already the Fossil Q. I think a lot of their watches are eligible for that upgrade. So
gotcha.
but until they release their first cellular version, I think.
So I
It's
don't
gonna be
know.
tough.
I think I'm kind of stuck on. I think there's a problem with the perception of smart watches being devices that are supposed to do all this stuff. And my favorite things about smartwatches are really simpler, and I think people find them a lot less sexy, but they're the aspects of like at a glance, small pieces of information delivery, small notification delivery, simple watch like features, stopwatches, timers, and then really good voice controls and voice actions. I mean, like, having a cellular option is cool for those times that I'm working out with it. I guess that's kind of fun, but it
So-
doesn't radically change what I've already come to enjoy about other smartwatches that I've used.
Two apps that I think are great examples of, how Android Wear has, been able to improve between 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that is AccuWeather, where there were only 2 screens available. One was the current conditions and one was an hour-by-hour forecast. And then it directed you to the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Now you get to search for local, like zip code localized conditions on the watch. You get, more. You get to change more options like that. I don't know why that wasn't the first. One of the first. Well, it wasn't there in the first case.
Right.
And there's also watch face that relies more on data as well. And there's also Uber. Are loath to talk about Uber in some liberal circles. Right now, at least. Uber is the only...
I feel that was directed at me, as I haven't uninstalled Uber from my phone.
Is the only ride-hailing... Lyft hasn't had an Android Wear app in a while, and we see now Uber, you can order a ride directly from the watch, so you can go home to grab that phone that you left at home, and then pop back out for a ride.
I don't disagree that there will be uses for that cellular data connection. I'm just saying, for what you rely on for that partnership between a small screen that lives on your wrist that provides you little tidbits of information, and then you have your phone for your actual mobile computing, and then you go to like a laptop or a desktop for more involved data usage. Again, there will be some perks or some benefits to having that separate cellular connection. I just don't see where it fundamentally changes the usage of a small screen wearable computing device that if you were already on board, well, that's just going to be another nice little perk. If you weren't on board or you didn't like smartwatches, that's not going to change your mind. You haven't really found a new consumer base. I don't really think wearables are going to find a new customer base until we get to things like AR glasses, or we get really, really smart audio systems. Like I just popped my other earbud off of my shoulder there.
Smart audio systems.
So I mean, like really hyper intelligent, like a Google Assistant on steroids that just lives in your ear, that kind of a thing. I don't think consumers are really going to kind of light up and give a new push towards wearable tech until we see something that fundamentally changes our relationship with data, or our relationship with our phone, I should say more specifically, in a way that we feel is more positive to social etiquette. That's just my take on it.
Well,
I could be wrong.
I mean, I think smaller form factors are pretty important in terms of being, having those around to activate things in the real world, or to, trigger things in the real world, as opposed to, it's smartphones can be a passive experience if you really want them to be, but when you're
it can be. And then I also have a flip phone here too. If I want a really passive experience, I can just go to that. I don't know. I just kind of feel like I think smartwatches were done a disservice when like especially when the first Gear was launched, and it had a camera and it had this touch screen, and all the advertisements were pointing towards this amazing wrist computer, which really wasn't what was great about smartwatches. I really feel like it's silly, but the best thing about a smartwatch is that it's kind of like a regular watch. It small little pieces of at a glance information. Not, can I replace what I do on my phone on an even smaller screen? That's a terrible.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not. If you're using it to intake information as opposed to activate stuff, then I don't. It's like that, I think that's going to be. It's going to be a trigger, not a movie screen. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Sony is thinking about putting out a phone, and it might have codenamed it within its headquarters Pikachu. I don't know exactly why. They decide to start going with the mythical, legendary Well, they're not legendary Pokemon per se, but it's a mid-ranger, it looks like, and it appears to be following on from the Xperia XA, as our old friend Adrian Diaconescu is running up. So not bad for a mid-ranger. We're talking about MediaTek Helio P20 processor, 5-inch 720p screen, which is that was so 2015, I think. Um, but decent RAM, decent cameras, decent storage. If you think 32 megapixels, gigabytes is proper.
We gotta wrap this show up. You're falling apart on me. We gotta get some food in you, dude.
Yeah, but that's the hub. I mean, it
well,
sounds
I mean, like
good.
the point of the story, though. The point of the story,
MWC.
though, isn't that Sony is looking to do something unique. It looks like it's just going to be a branded Xperia XA. And do you think moves like this really move phones? Like, Sony's got a bunch of Xperia XA parts lying around, so they're going to have a Pikachu phone, just like Samsung made like a Batman version of the S7.
I was really sad when I wasn't able to
cool?
get the sharp neon, the Evangelion, Neon Genesis.
If Sony's timing were a little bit better, they could have put out this Pikachu phone in time for the Pokemon Go update, but they can't even do that. So this is already like a non-starter for me.
I mean, it's that's Niantic. They don't care whether MWC happens or not. Like, come on.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on to the next story, and I have to just warn anyone watching the video that the image that you're about to see on your screen could be potentially very disturbing to
viewer discretion is advised, unless you're a listener, in which case, you know what? I think I'm going to drop in some lovely licking sounds and lovely sucking noises.
God, I'll never be able to listen to our podcast if you put in
yes.
I already have enough of I read this amazing research that was just recently done on misophonia, and it was fascinating because it's basically my life. But I am going to click over now because we had some very harsh words to write about the OnePlus 3T's Valentine's Day ad campaign.
Well, if you're gonna allude to them, then I might as well.
To anyone who's watching the video right now, that you're seeing the image, which is currently on your screen right now.
That's a pretty tame image. it gets worse. The background for my backing video channel on this, which was not able to get in. Thank you, Hangouts, for kicking my video feed out. That was very lovely. Happy Valentine's Day to you, Hangouts. But yeah, if you're alluding to Adrian's literature on this, then I might as well just quote the whole paragraph, or the whole article, excuse me. No stranger to controversial, distasteful, or outright wrong publicity stunts in the somewhat distant past, OnePlus strikes again with a Valentine's Day marketing campaign very obviously meant to shock. Unfortunately, a commercial that actually starts off with a decent, original, and crafty idea quickly takes a turn for the disgusting, as a number of OnePlus 3T owners get a little too into their powerful, fast, sleek, and beastly phones. He loves those adjectives. If you thought T-Mobile was weird for literally punishing Kristen Shaw with Verizon surprise fees and confusing bills, wait until you see how these poor lesser-known actors hired by OnePlus express their fictional love for the 3T. Or just stop watching the below-invented video before the 40-second mark.
No, but we're at the 30 seconds now, and it's so creepy, and it's bad. And 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and pause. Yes. I'm not gonna finish OnePlus's job there. There was actually a little bit of a stink made internally at Pocketnow.
I bet someone in the street corner would finish the job.
Well, no. Oh yeah, no kidding. No, I mean, like there was some controversy internally, like a little inside baseball on how we craft our editorial and just sort of the differences between some of the video producers and some of the writers. Personally, I didn't really have any issues with how Adrian presented this story, but there was some conversation. Like, we have a pretty good relationship with OnePlus. We very much enjoy their most recent products. It's not an issue with the phone or the product itself. It's just we'd really kind of hoped that they'd grown up out of these types of shenanigans in how
This
they're
is the
presenting
fun.
their products.
This campaign comes from the company that had a promo to smash the past and have you smash your phone in front of
Right.
them for a free phone, and also like modeling contests where women are subject to being ranked by a forum of users on their
Right.
beauty
Right, but
and whatnot.
we're talking about a company that used to do things like that, and even though they would get a little spiky or they were still an outlandish company, we had seen them grow up out of those types of shenanigans, and so trying to generate some buzz, trying to make some noise, trying to get people to talk about the brand, I just don't think this is the way to do it. I think this was borderline just unsettling.
Hmm.
It got us talking about them, but not in the way that we want to talk about them, because we want to, if I want to show my aunt or uncle a phone that I think that they might enjoy, and they look up a OnePlus ad of someone like,
Well,
filleting
I'll
their
give them
phone.
credit for, going the whole spectrum of people there, because, that was a nice touch at
No, but
least.
that's just it. Is like, it looks like a less respectable company. You know what I mean? Like, no one's gonna have any issues recommending an Apple product to a family member or friend. And when you look at Apple products, they're positioned as very, like upscale, and they're adult products, and they're grown up, and they're not. And I don't mean adult products like OnePlus is kind of talking about adult products, but this is the kind of thing, like, it kind of sets the conversation on OnePlus back, in my opinion, and it makes them look childish, or it makes them look like they're trying to be shocking, which they are. They're trying to be shocking, which means they're not really succeeding in being shocking. They're just being kind of gross.
It's lovely, and this is all tied in with the giveaway campaign too. So I actually took part I actually signed up for the giveaway. So I was like, okay, you know
Cool.
what, Machiavellian I am. Just do it.
Do it. So from
I
Francisco
have no
Herrera.
qual. Yeah, okay.
Just let me get the answers, because we got to wrap this
Yeah.
show up. From Francisco Herrera, I love my OnePlus 3T, but not that much. And then from Rena Chan, this one almost made me snarf the water that I was drinking while I was still in screen share. PN Weekly, a phone normally has as much bacteria as a public WC door handle or toilet paper holder. I ain't licking my phone anytime soon.
Mhm.
And again, as someone who is recovering from the norovirus, has been wiping everything in his home with like the nastiest bleach wipes I can get my hands on. I've been detailing my phones so many times over the last couple days. I will join you, Rena Chan, in never putting my phone anywhere near my mouth, and I'll stick with like headsets and headphones to get my communication handled like that.
Bum bum.
It was pretty filthy. So
You
we
want to
do
get to the
have. Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna jump in. You're on point, Jules. I caught the bump. I know what that means. We do have one listener email to throw in here. This is coming from
Cobrio Ali, and he
very well
writes
done
in
there.
that he wanted to share some news that hasn't made it into the news. So, opinion on the Galaxy S7 beta program. He enrolled in it back in November,
Actually,
hoping that
Jules, you're
Samsung would.
breaking up on me just a little bit. I'll read through it. Give
Okay.
me a just. I've got it here. So with my Galaxy S7, I enrolled in the beta program back in November, hoping to help Samsung iron out bugs, which I did by submitting them on their forums. Excuse me. Even got some replies from Samsung directly. All good and well. However, the beta ended in December. Yet there's a flood of us stuck on this beta firmware. We can't downgrade unless we do manually using Odin, and communication from Samsung is non-existent. FYI, mine is an Exynos version with the product code XEU. So frustration, and wanted your thoughts. Keep up the good work. Thanks.
Wow.
That sounds terrible.
Nice. So we've been, experiencing a good, new wave of beta programs in the past couple of years. I mean, Apple has been pointing them out, and then OnePlus has always been on the leading edge of this kind of stuff. But Samsung, Less so. They started off with the Note. Wait, was it the Note 5 that got got a test of the Marshmallow or something? Marshmallow UI or something.
I don't remember.
And then they transitioned over into the Nougat program, and this happened. Um, yeah, I'm not. This is so one of the developments there was that Verizon, decided to opt out, or Verizon units like couldn't get the fourth version of the beta for
Yeah.
some reason, and that was on it itself. Beta programs, when you sign up for beta programs, you're suscepting yourself to risk,
Yeah, but I
more
mean,
risk
I think there's also an
but
expectation that the companies are going
there's an
to,
expectation.
yeah, because I mean, like, I've always been a beta tester on Windows phones, for example, because oftentimes it would be the only way you could get updates, especially if you were on some of those older Lumias. But same thing, like with the Honor 8, I'm still cranky that my official Nougat update for my Honor 8 still hasn't come in. But you would think a company like Samsung would have the resources to provide their users better tools to do something like roll back without having to go in and do the kinds of things that Samsung actually has been trying to prevent individual users from doing, the flashing ROMs in a more aggressive way like that. Now, I'm happy to see Jesse Roca in the live chat brought this up, because I saw it this afternoon and completely forgot that this story had posted. But it sounds like the T-Mobile Nougat update for the Galaxy S7 is live, and if I remember correctly, they're actually going to be prioritizing anyone who was a part of the beta program. So at least one carrier is looking to improve upon the situation that Samsung has created. So T-Mobile, if you're a T-Mobile Galaxy S7 user, it seems like they will be trying to correct Samsung's mistreatment of their poor beleaguered beta testers there. So I'll give my thumbs up of gratitude to T-Mobile for getting on the ball there.
Hmm. So, I mean, there is no good answer in terms of being able to help. Yeah, I mean, you have a European unit. It's
Yeah.
really up to either
But no,
Samsung or
we completely share your frustrations there, because this
yeah.
is not the way that I think a beta test should be handled. And especially even for like for my Nexus being on beta builds, isn't it just like you just turn off being on beta builds and then you're just not
Yeah.
on beta firmware anymore and you're done?
Android beta program had it right. They just sent you another. Wait. You were able to sign on quickly, but did it just leave you if you signed off of the beta program, and you
I'm
would
gonna
have to?
actually have to test that. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know, because I only just recently got the 6P a couple months ago, and I put it on the beta test program, but I haven't taken it back off, so I'll have to test that. But I don't remember any other phones at that tier, like what you would expect at a Galaxy S7 tier, to
Hmm.
have that much difficulty in helping you get back to just normal software.
I would prefer things to happen more like the Android apps, on the Google Play Store. You just click in for the app, and then you get different APKs. Like that's it.
Mhm.
Boom. That'd be great. Thank you.
That would be nice. And
Mhm.
on that note, I think it's time that we shut this puppy down. That's, you don't need to keep doing that for the.
Okay.
Again, we're not for hangouts. This is where we would have really cool music for you guys to listen to. But I'm just gonna go into my spiel, and I'll probably screw it up like I did the top of the show. So there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. This show is ending, but the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Jules as @PointJules, and I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Pocketnow is around the web on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and our home site, pocketnow.com. We're basically everywhere. Shows like this cannot exist without your support. By sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology, and by dropping reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever podcast reviews can be left. I'll take a good bathroom wall scrawl at this point. You got to help us out with some words on some of those review sites. Once again, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Mara.ai. Definitely check out their running assistant. I thought it was pretty cool software. I'm going to be trying to use it a bit more when I get back from MWC. They're helping us keep the lights on, but ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness. So make sure you tune back in.